Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Founder Wednesdays, a regular stream where we talk to fashion entrepreneurs and founders of direct-to-consumer brands about building profitable, sustainable, and stronger businesses. Today, we are talking to Samuel Ade, a co-founder of Ilana, a store for Black-owned fashion brands, as well as a platform for designers to connect and gain expertise. In this conversation, we talk about challenges that up-and-coming designers typically face, Brexit and its implications for small businesses, and finally, diversity and representation in the fashion industry. So tune in, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey, hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well too. I'm so excited to have you today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to our chat.
Of course, of course. For everyone who is joining us, I have a very special guest today. I am joined by Samuel, who is a co-founder of Ilana. And Ilana is a marketplace for Black-owned fashion designers, as well as a platform for designers to connect with each other, to gain expertise, to learn and collaborate with each other. So thank you again so much for spending your evening with us.
No worries. Thank you for having me. I love the setup, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Very
Yeah,
professional.
yeah, yeah. You gotta step up the game, right? If you're doing it every Wednesday, which we
Definitely.
are doing every Wednesday.
Definitely.
Well, thank you again so much for joining us. And what I would like to start with is just pretty much from the very beginning. What is Ilana, and how did you come up with the idea?
So it's interesting actually. Basically, an influencer tweeted last year, June, just saying that she would love to come across a fast fashion brand that's Black owned that she can spend her coin with. And a friend of mine, responded and said his wife has been nagging him for weeks on just a fast fashion brand she can also spend her coin with. And I responded and I said, oh, that's a great idea, but what would be great is having a marketplace for entrepreneurs, that's dedicated to Black-owned fashion brands. Um, and then I thought about it and I was like, yeah, actually, that's a good idea. I might build it. And someone responded, build it. So I thought about it for a day. And yeah, just kind of reached out to my co-founder and we got started. So we started working on it in June and we launched it by November.
Oh, that's amazing. So it's been a very fast journey for you, I guess, in terms of the growth and the launch.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
how many brands do you have today on the platform?
So we currently have four. I'm happy to announce that one of our brands has actually joined us for this live, Hollow Rose. So we onboarded her yesterday, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, so we currently have four, two in Ghana and two in Nigeria as well.
Okay, perfect. So what I would like to understand is that how did you end up starting this business in fashion? Do you come from the fashion industry, or is it something that you just saw an opportunity in and decided to jump into?
Yeah, so I set up a social enterprise when I was 19, alongside other young people under the umbrella of a charity. And essentially, we were a streetwear brand called Hustlebucks, and we trained young people in garment printing and clothing as well. So yeah, I've kind of had expertise and experience in fashion for a number of years, obviously running a brand and a social enterprise. So we set up, launched a pop-up shop, and we occupied a shop for 6 years as well. And then we ended up migrating back to where we started from, which was the gallery space, which is called 198. And then from there, we just started, doing events around fashion and trying to encourage creatives to get into the creative industry. So we ended up working with the XX as well, which is a rock indie group for those that ain't familiar with them. So we did that in 2016. And yeah, just kind of built it from momentum to momentum. So I kind of stepped back in 2019 to just focus on desk and other things because I launched another company straight out of uni, as well as another company 2 years ago. So yeah, I've been in fashion for a number of years, or been around fashion for a number of years.
Looking back and compared to where the industry is today, do you think it's easier or harder for entrepreneurs like you start businesses in fashion?
I would say it's difficult. I think the climate's changed quite drastically. There's been a lot of changes fast. People are more conscious of where they're buying, who they shop with and why they shop with them. So yeah, there's just, a number of changes that's happened within the fashion industry, so much so that if you're coming in as a brand, you need to be able to offer something that's really kind of unique because it is a crowded market. Do you know what I mean? And there's so many options, so many different kinds of brands that people can buy from these days.
So how can brands, especially if let's say if you're a designer and you're starting a brand, so what are some of the tips to stand out in this crowded space?
I would say be authentic, stay authentic to why you started out. Each and every one of us have a story. It's really key that you stay authentic to the story and to the journey and to why you started out. I think more so than anything else, people are craving authenticity in this day and age. It's one of the reasons as to why people, partner with people or just even support people, because they want to ensure that you're an authentic brand, you're integral, you stand for something, you have certain values. So I would say it's definitely important that you're integral and authentic in just how you do business and why you do business. One of the things that people love about Ilana particularly is that in as much as it started, from a tweet, the inspiration is my mother. She was an aspiring fashion designer, and she always aimed to make it in the fashion industry, but due to having us, she wasn't really able to pursue it in the way that she would have loved to, so we set up Ilana in honor of her memory. And whenever people hear that, it really resonates with them because that's a story that is true to me and true to the brand, basically.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense because if you are to tell the story every day to hundreds and thousands of people, it has to be something that you're truly passionate about and something very true to yourself. Because otherwise, it's just going to be extremely hard to tell a story that has nothing to do with who you are.
Definitely.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the brands that you work with and specifically the key issues that those up-and-coming brands are facing today and how Ilana helps them to overcome those.
So we currently have a community as well. So there's two aspects to our business. So we have a store for fashion brands, to sell through. And primarily we're targeting West African brands and Black-owned brands primarily. We also have a community which enables, a fashion designer, emerging fashion designer to gain expertise. So we partner them with a fashion expert and they can essentially upload images of their sketches, their toes, their patterns, their samples, as well as their final collection and get, feedback on each stage of that development process. So it's bespoke to us because it's, it's a 4-stage process and we've created it uniquely for fashion designers. So if you're a fashion designer longing for, expertise or support, you can join our community and get that one-to-one support. You can also connect with other designers who are part of the platform as well. So find out where they're based, find out a bit about them and just basically connect with them.
Mm-hmm. So I would love to sort of untangle those two components, right? Let's start first with the store part. How are you picking the brands to feature in that store? What are some of the key criteria for you as Ilana, as a brand, as a marketplace to pick the brands to work with?
For us, it's very much we're targeting luxury brands. Do you know what I mean? So as long as they're a luxury brand and they're, obviously Black-owned, that's our criteria. Do you know what I mean? So it's been quite difficult to obviously, work with certain designers on ground in West Africa and get them to meet the standards of specifications that we're used to in the West. But essentially, that's one of the things that we knew might be an issue, essentially which is why we created the community, because we're aware that there is a need, especially when you're starting out. Do you know what I mean? You want to be able to kind of get that one-to-one support and feedback on whatever you're, creating or developing. So yeah, it's been a bit of a challenge in that regard, just finding the right kinds of brands to work with, especially considering we're a new brand. Do you know what I mean? So we've only been going for, a few months. So we don't have, the publicity and, all the kind of track record or experience as other brands that are similar to us have. But people tie into our vision. They love what we're about. They know who we're serving and catering. So that's been helpful.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to representation in the fashion industry, obviously this is a topic that is becoming a little bit more hotter and more discussed these days. There is this assumption that the reason why we are seeing so few Black-owned brands in the industry is because of so-called pipeline issue, meaning that there aren't just that many brands around. What is your take on it?
I think there's so many brands around. Do you know what I mean? I think obviously when we were doing the social enterprise, and this is obviously one of the things that helped, in terms of just me validating the concept and the need, because over the years, I've seen fashion designers firsthand long for knowledge or just kind of like, resources to really help scale their brands. Like the amount of young people I know or in my network that want to set up a clothing brand or have set up a clothing brand is crazy. Do you know what I mean? So I don't think there's a lack of, I just think there's a lack of awareness and lack of support and a lack of resources. When it comes to the emerging designer, especially if you're, from an ethnic minority background, it's very difficult to get your foot in the door. Do you know what I mean? And get access to the right opportunities or get even just exposure. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, due to Black Lives Matter movement, there's more kind of like, awareness, more like, more awareness and kind of more exposure, for Black-owned brands. So this is our time, so to speak. But I think obviously over the years, it's been quite challenging if you're an ethnic minority, founder of a brand to really get your foot into the fashion industry and make waves. But I don't think there's a lack of brands. I don't think, I just think there's a lack of awareness and
Yeah, I think that was my take as well on it. So it's really about just not pretending that there aren't talented designers out there, but really just giving them all the tools and opportunities that they rightfully so deserve.
Definitely.
So with that, I would love to understand a little bit about the sort of the platform aspect of Ilana. So what are some of the things that brands today can gain from being on Ilana's platform?
So
with regards to yeah, please. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, you cut off, so I didn't get to catch that last part. Do you want to repeat that, please?
Yeah, so with regards to what I mean by the platform is with regards to the educational part, as well as like providing the tools to collaborate and to communicate with each other.
So I feel obviously with the community, if you're a designer, not only do you get to connect with other designers, because obviously a lot of designers and a lot of brands work in isolation. Do you know what I mean? At the early stages of starting out, whenever you're starting up a brand, you tend to work in isolation. Do you know what I mean? Very few start off with a team and you have the money and resources to do so. So they'll be able to obviously, connect with other designers, not only just, do you know what I mean, in West Africa, but around the world, hopefully, once we begin to expand beyond West Africa and Africa. But they'll be able to connect with other designers on ground in West Africa, and they'll be able to obviously partner with an expert and get feedback on their development process. Do you know what I mean? I think that critical thinking is something that quite a few brands lack. Do you know what I mean? They lack that kind of feedback from external people outside of their circle or their brand about their brand. So they'll be able to get feedback on what they're creating. Do you know what I mean? One-to-one feedback from someone who's partnered with them, understands, what they're creating, and then they'll be able to improve on what they've developed. Do you know what I mean? The idea is that once they've uploaded something and they've dialogued with the expert, it's only once they're happy with the stage of their development that they're now able to move on to the next stage. So the other stages are locked until they themselves and their expert is happy to be able to, do you know what I mean, proceed. So it's raising that kind of standard and bar of what it takes to be in the fashion industry. And the idea is that they'll be able to see the standard through our store anyway. Do you know what I mean? We're keeping the quality of brands that join our store quite high, because we want designers that come on there to be aware of the standard and the expectation of what they ought to produce, especially if they consider themselves a luxury brand.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I think it's also that aspect of sort of mentorship and access to the network and educational part of it. I do see how it can play a big role for young and up and coming designers.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
So,
I think obviously our plan is to expand beyond West Africa, like I mentioned. You know what I mean? So wherever you are as a fashion designer, you can benefit from our community. That aspect of the business is not solely focusing on Black-owned designers, do you know what I mean, or Black designers. or ethnic minority designers. It's focusing on designers background, regardless of where you're based, emerging talent, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. So when it comes to the, like, let's say like future plans on the platform, what are the other parts of this like mentorship, educational aspect of the platform do you foresee adding to the platform?
For us, our focus is obviously to develop for a membership to join the community, because at the moment the process is free, entirely free. So to community to benefit from the expertise, you don't need to pay anything. But we're looking to introduce a membership model eventually that will give, emerging designers the opportunity to access resources that guide them through that process of development. Do you know what I mean? So they'll be able to see experts, take them through, starting a garment from scratch and completing it. They're having access to the resources that they may not be able to access on other platforms, and they'll be able to access that on a monthly basis. So the plan is to obviously develop the platform to where we have, an extensive community, but to also introduce the membership model as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to the business itself, do you find it challenging to run sort of almost two companies in one? You have the marketplace, and then you have the educational
Extremely
platform.
challenging.
Yeah, I can imagine
Extremely
that. Like,
challenging.
how are you balancing it? How are you making it work?
So thankfully I have, an amazing co-founder, you know what I mean, that, is responsible for the community and heads up the community aspect of things. So I just leave her to crack on with it. She's got 16 years experience and expertise in the fashion industry, and she's worked on it at every level, as well as managing a team of over 200 people, so for her, it's something that she knows, and she knows well. Do you know what I mean? So I'm able to obviously leave that aspect in her capable hands whilst I focus on other areas of the business. But yeah, it's challenging. Do you know what I mean? And building both seemed crazy. Do you know what I mean? Especially when we were telling our developer in the early stages that this is the platform we want to build, and we want to build it in 4 months. It seemed really crazy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, there was doubts as to even whether, we would be able to get it completed in time. So just even recruiting these brands has been a challenge as well. Do you know what I mean? Like I mentioned before, brands are quite particular on who they stock with. Do you know what I mean? And the reputation of who they stock with. So considering we're a new brand and an emerging brand, it can be difficult to even just kind of prove our credibility. Mm-hmm. But people love our vision, do you know what I mean? And they understand what we're building and what we're trying to do. And obviously what we're finding is West African designers are hungry to penetrate this market. Do you know what I mean? With my network, and with Bobby's network and experience as well, we're really able to really get the word out there and get exposure to these brands.
Mm-hmm. I would love to dive into a little bit into co-founder relationship. This is a topic that comes up a lot in the community of brands that we have in this Founder Wednesdays, because a lot of founders, they either are solo founders, or at least they start as solo founders by themselves. So can you give some advice and tips on building strong co-founder relationship, and maybe even taking a step back, like how do you find a co-founder? How did you folks end up starting this business together?
So unique story, actually. We met in church. So funny enough, we met in the same church, and so but she was championing everything I did even before I started Ilana. Do you know what I mean? Like, she would attend some of my events, she would participate in a lot of the things that I was already doing. So she was a champion of what I did, and she believed in me. Do you know what I mean? She even invited me because she works in a prison, a youth offenders prison. And she got me to speak to the young people there, do you know what I mean? Because I'm passionate about young people and seeing them, grow and develop. So it was a situation where she was already supportive of all the things I was doing, and she's a great person. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was a situation where I knew that this was someone I would love to work with, but what I would say that is for anyone that's looking for a co-founder, it's very important that, you focus on vision and values, that your vision and values align. Do you know what I mean? Often at times people's visions align, but their values don't. Mm-hmm. So it's very important that, do you know what I mean, that whoever you're potentially working with, whoever, you recruit on your team, that you have, that basis and foundation where your vision and values align. And for myself and Bobby, both of that align. Do you know what I mean? We both have a similar vision and we both have similar values. So it just made sense. Do you know what I mean? And she brings something that I don't bring to the table. which is interesting because as you mentioned, I always considered myself a solo founder. A lot of the businesses I've run them by myself. Do you know what I mean? So to actually get into a relationship with someone else was, something that I had to overcome myself. Like, wow, I'm actually going to be working with someone and I'm going to be working with them quite closely, but there's no better person that I would have built this with. Do you know what I mean? She's someone who's amazing. And yeah, like I said, she brings something to the table through her 16 years of expertise. So there's elements and aspects that she brings to the business that I don't.
Yeah, no, she sounds fantastic. And I think what you're saying, it really resonates. So it's really, you start with making sure that your values and your passions are aligned. And then you also look into the sort of complementary skills, making sure that everyone fits in as a piece of a puzzle.
Definitely. Absolutely. It's important. Do you know what I mean? Like anyone you're building with, it's important they champion what you do and the vision that you're trying to build. Do you know what I mean? Or the business you're trying to build. I think obviously too many times we can just look at skill sets and neglect, vision and values, whether our visions and our values align. But that's very important, especially if this is something you're looking to grow into a unicorn or something you're looking to, grow into a successful company. That cohesion and that unity that you have as a co-founders will filter into everything that you do within the organization. So that unity that you're trying to create, that culture that you're trying to create starts with you two. And if you're not aligned or you don't see eye to eye, that will filter into your organization and the company you're trying to build.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I want to almost like crop what you're saying in a separate video and just send it to every founder or fashion entrepreneur that I'm talking to, because it is so often in this industry that people start by themselves.
So you're breaking up. Sorry, I'm losing. So I lost you for a moment. So do you want to repeat that? Yeah. Do you want to repeat that?
Yeah. I was just saying that it is quite common in this industry to start as a solo founder. And I think having a co-founder just makes such a huge difference. So I'm really glad that you're sharing these tips and advice, because I'm sure it will be very valuable for a lot of founders. Yeah.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah. So for anyone, by the way, anyone who is joining us now, we are talking about everything fashion and building businesses. And specifically, I'm talking to Samuel about his company called Ilana, which is a store for Black-owned fashion brands, as well as the platform for designers to connect and gain expertise and communicate with each other. We will have a time at the end of the session to go through some of the questions. So if you have a question, please press a small icon with a question mark in the bottom and type your question, and then we will go through some of those questions at the end. So one of the topics I wanted to discuss with you, and this is mainly because you folks are a UK registered company, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So Brexit, that's obviously a topic that is also quite hot. I would love to hear a little bit about like how this whole Brexit experience has been for you and for the business. Are there any advantages, disadvantages, some challenges that you guys had to overcome?
Yeah, definitely. I think for us, it was kind of a major shock, obviously, when we entered into Tier 4. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure if you're aware of Tier 4. So we entered into lockdown in December for those that, ain't aware of the situation. So that by itself halted imports into the UK. Do you know what I mean? There was nothing coming into the UK. So our focus then shifted from the store element to let's just build the community. That's all we can do. Do you know what I mean? Just ensure that, designers are being onboarded to the community and really gaining expertise through that. But yeah, since Brexit, like that's changed just in terms of like even the documentation, do you know what I mean? And things that we didn't necessarily feel that we needed before. So there's an ERI number that we now need, in order for us to do business with the European Union. We need to now be VAT registered, which is compulsory, regardless of how much income you're bringing into the organization. And that wasn't something that was the case before. It was requirement of you making at least 85 grand. For you to now have to register the company. However, due to Brexit, we now have to be VAT registered regardless of how much income we're taking in. And that caused complications to even just how we built the platform, because we never considered VAT when we were building it. So obviously that I now had to get my developer to to actually make some tweaks and changes, even to how, we take payments to ensure that's covered. I had to become VAT registered. I've had to apply for a EORI number as well. Even tax and duties have changed, in terms of the costings of that. So, yeah, there's just been different changes that have been really difficult to adjust to. But it's absolutely necessary. These are things that are unavoidable, right? So it's just been difficult adapting to things because there were things that we didn't necessarily foresee when we were building the platform or even when we launched.
Do you think as a small business, sort of consequences of Brexit are a little bit harsher on you just with regards to all the legal and also sort of bureaucracy that you need to deal with now?
Definitely, but I recommend if you're a small business, recruit a lawyer to help with those things. Like I recruited a lawyer to obviously deal with the legal aspects quite early on. And then also just made sure that I became very, aware of what changes I needed to make within the business. So in January, I jumped on an event, a webinar ran by, the Mayor of London, to make sure that I'm aware of what the requirements are for small businesses. Now we've obviously had Brexit.
Yeah, that's an excellent advice. Are there any other resources or maybe, websites or some other sources of information that you found to be absolutely valuable with this sort of Brexit transition?
Yeah, so Business Hub, I would say check out the Business Hub. They're constantly providing resources. And like I said, I think the event that I attended was in conjunction with Business Hub and the Mayor of London. So I believe they might have a link to that somewhere on their site. But yeah, that site was extremely helpful, and just a lot of the events that they're doing to make people aware. I'd say check out gov.uk as well. There's a lot of information, a lot of access to resources on there. There's also a pot of money that the government have allocated for people to become, ready, business-wise for the whole Brexit situation. So I'm not sure if it's available just yet, but I know that it will be in the weeks to come. So it's worth checking out and accessing that if possible.
Yeah, that's amazing. We will make sure to save this information in the video afterwards as well. So for anyone based out of the UK, please do check out all those resources. Sounds like something that could be very valuable and handy for a lot of brands.
Definitely.
Yeah. So one other thing that is also obviously that everyone talks and thinks about, and you already mentioned a little bit yourself as well, is the pandemic. And especially in your case, when you actually started building the business in the midst of the pandemic. Of course, there is this term, the wartime and the peacetime CEO and founder. So I wonder, given your previous experiences, entrepreneurial experiences, how was it different this time around during the pandemic?
I think it was really difficult. It's one thing that after we launched, we realized how difficult it was just connecting with brands. Because obviously it's a situation where we're now having to do everything online. We're not able to really connect with them in the way that we would used to connect with brands. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just face to face. Setting up meetings. So obviously, as a result of that, it became very difficult for us to just even connect with, luxury Black brands, and it's been extremely difficult even just maintaining relationships and communications with, brands based in West Africa, because it's a situation where their method of working is a lot different to how it is in the UK. Do you know what I mean? They don't tend to kind of operate or function using email. Like they prefer to do things via WhatsApp. Do you know what I mean? So it was like, that took us a while to learn. Obviously, we managed to recruit someone on ground in Ghana as well to help us, actually start recruiting the brands, because it became extremely difficult. And we were like 2 months away from launching and we hardly had any brands. So it's a situation where for us, it was very difficult for us to just make the connections and build the relationships that were needed during the time of building. But I felt the time was right, and I felt that it was needed, considering the climate we're in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I could see that it really came out of a place of strong conviction, starting this business. And I completely understand all the different hurdles that you had to overcome. The one aspect that is very interesting is obviously about the connection and the communication. I think that's a topic that is being discussed a lot today during the pandemic, in
Yeah.
personal, in professional lives. For you, what were some of the things that you felt worked to build that relationship and connection with brands despite the pandemic and despite WhatsApps and emails and so on?
Yeah, I felt for us, recruiting someone on ground or just making sure that someone was
Mhm.
dedicated to reaching out to brands was really helpful. Because obviously as a business owner, you have to put your hands in so many pies. You have to focus on so many different things at the same time. So actually delegating that piece of work to someone else was really helpful, because it became a full-time thing. Do you know what I mean? For them to actually constantly send out emails, reach out to different people. So I would say if you're not in a position to actually recruit someone or to, like get someone to help you with that, I would say look at methods to really just build your relationship with the different brands. You know what I mean? I think obviously people are open to community more so than they have been ever. Do you know what I mean? Like we've been working in isolation for how long? So people know
Yeah.
that there is a need for community and they value community right now. So I would say, yeah, just kind of try and build authentic relationships and come from the perspective of building relationships. You know what I mean? I think too many
Mhm.
times we can be so focused on what do I get from this relationship or what value do they offer and neglect building that relationship with emerging brands or emerging talent that can yield results in the years and months to come. So I would say just connect with people authentically in a way that, you know what I mean, is suitable to both parties. I think because obviously we're in a situation where we're all having to rely online, um, that's the only way that we can connect with people, right? So just utilize the best way possible, but make sure that when you're connecting with people, you're authentic and that, yeah, you genuinely want to connect with people.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think you're right. Like, I think especially now during the pandemic, and we are more than a year into it, and it's a global pandemic, so everyone around the world is impacted. I think people do crave that authentic relationship and connection with each other. And I think also for a lot of
Definitely.
people, this pandemic became a filter. So it made it very clear what you want to spend time on versus what you do not want to spend time on. And I think people are prioritizing those communities and connections that are more fulfilling for them.
Yeah. I just wanted to shout out my expert as well. She's joined the live, Nana. Great to have you here with us. So she's an expert on the community as well. So it's good to see her.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And by the way, for everyone who is joining, we will have a section after the discussion to take a couple of questions. So if you have a question for Samuel, please tap a small icon with a question mark at the bottom and type it in there. And we will spend the last 10, 15 minutes or so going through some of those questions. Final question, last question on the pandemic, and I promise I'm not going to talk too much about that.
No worries.
But one of the things that I've noticed when I talk to designers and artisans and in general workers in the fashion industry around the world, be that Italy or Southeast Asia, we of course have seen that this pandemic has been especially hard on the smaller manufacturers, workers, and artisans, with orders being canceled, with all the uncertainty that has been happening. So what I would love to understand is, given your experience, what is happening now on the ground in West Africa, and how is the industry at large impacted there by the pandemic? Are there any sort of trends that you're seeing that are emerging out of it? Is there any help that is coming from local governments or international organizations?
That's a great question. What I'm finding is that life is more or less continuing as normal in West Africa. Do you know what I mean? Like they're not really that affected as we are in the West. Solely because obviously I think just in terms of their cases, it's quite low in comparison to a lot of countries. So yeah, life is we found is functioning as usual. I think the only issues that we found is that when it comes to the delivery, do you know what I mean? Just delivering items. Places outside of Africa is obviously affected due to the pandemic. Do you know what I mean? Like there's delays. There's stoppages, do you know what I mean? The parcels are not being delivered on time. So I think that's the only real effects that we're seeing. Do you know what I mean? But a lot of brands that, especially the ones that we recruited, are doing extremely well. So Ferruccio is recently featured in Vogue. Same with Atto and Larry J. Do you know what I mean? They're doing extremely well. Do you know what I mean? On Grounded. So it's been amazing to obviously recruit them at the time that we've recruited them, because we're able to see the growth ever since they've joined the platform and with what they're doing. Do you know what I mean? Like they've all, I think, Ferruccio has recently signed up to Farfetch as well. He's on the folklore. So they're doing extremely well. Do you know what I mean? They've been benefiting growing despite what's happening.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I think it is a good point that even though the pandemic has been global, the actions different countries have taken and the different governments have taken were very different. I guess like there are some economies that are bouncing back a little bit faster than some of the others around the world. One other topic that is very much discussed these days is sustainability. It is the topic that we pretty much discuss with every founder on this Founders Wednesdays, just simply because obviously it's a very important topic to talk about, but it's also something that is maybe sometimes controversial, maybe sometimes people have different opinions on. So what I would like to start with is to understand what is sustainability in fashion for you personally.
Sustainability in fashion. I feel, creating clothing that lasts. Do you know what I mean? Creating clothing that has values and, a vision that lasts. And that really considers, the ethics of how they create their businesses, or how they create their brands, so to speak. I think that's really important. Do you know what I mean? I think more so, like I said before, the consumer cares not just about the products that they buy, but how it's made, how it's sourced, what went into it. Do you know what I mean? The why behind your brand. So I think obviously sustainable and ethical clothing is a real big topic in fashion. Do you know what I mean? People are longing for brands that are creating clothing using, paying their workers properly, using sustainable materials, things that essentially, enable their clothing to last. So people are looking for that quality, and we're seeing, people are willing to obviously part with their money if it means that they're going to get quality products. Do you know what I mean? We're seeing like an emergence with Gen Z. Do you know what I mean? They're all about their high fashion brands. They're all about their luxury brands. Do you know what I mean? Because they value sustainability. They value, things being ethically produced. People, brands working with the right morals and values. So sustainability is important because, I think that's the future of fashion. The reality is that we can't continue, the way that we're going. It's not sustainable.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're mentioning it also in the context of ethically produced fashion, because I think sometimes that part of the sustainability discussion is being overlooked. There's a lot of emphasis, and rightfully so, on the way we manufacture products and, using organic cotton and organic fabrics and so on.
Exactly.
But sometimes we forget, about the labor conditions, about the, in general, high standards across the supply chain in brands.
That's so important. And I think more so now than people are conscious of those things. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're seeing obviously like backlash from major brands or backlash towards major brands that are not producing clothing ethically and wasting stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like more so than now, people are really concerned about not only just where an item sourced, but how it was sourced. So it's important that we actually, produce sustainable clothing. And that's why we're working with luxury brands, because we see that as the future of fashion. We believe that more so than now, people are longing for, do you know what I mean, items that will last, but also that are ethically produced.
Yeah. Do you think the sort of public's consciousness is now becoming more aware of the issues in the specifically the labor part of the business? Perhaps through some of the exposés around the fast fashion brands and the labor conditions there. Do you think that is having its impact and is shifting the mindset and the perceptions that the public has about fast fashion specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what I mean? I think obviously like when people realize, like, just in terms of like the cost implications, of certain brands. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think obviously just witnessing on Twitter, Boohoo came under scrutiny when they started selling clothing for £1. And it was like, how are you able to sell, items so low, and still make a profit? Do you know what I mean? How much are you paying your workers that justify you to be able to sell your clothing that cheaply? So people are conscious of cost. Do you know what I mean? If the cost is too cheap, they begin to think, okay, what are you doing, or what corners are you cutting to ensure that you're able to produce your clothing at that cost? Do you know what I mean? And they're looking into things and willing to do the research to find out why that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also in the context of e-commerce, I think it's also important to not forget that those are some of the things that we need to keep in mind when dealing with e-commerce companies as well. Like, for example, now we are seeing more effort, like, for example, in the US for worker unions at Amazon, which I'm personally very excited about, because obviously that is something that we need to make sure happens as well. So as you said, it's not just about the item's price, but also like what happens when an item is delivered to you within the span of 4 hours, right? What kind of effort goes into that from workers in those warehouses? Yeah. So
definitely.
when you obviously have a lot of experience in the industry, do you see any fundamental differences in terms of sustainability, fashion sustainability discussion in the Western world versus, let's say, in West Africa with brands that you're working with?
So you say that again, you cut out.
Yeah, so what I was saying is that given your experience both in the Western world as well as in West Africa, are you seeing any differences fundamentally and conceptually in terms of how this conversation about sustainability goes on?
Yeah, we're finding that obviously a lot of like designers are self-taught, and if they go to, fashion school, it's only for 6 months. So a lot of them are leaving with a lack of, skill sets or even resources to really kind of, build sustainable brands on the same level as the West. So, and that's one thing that obviously, like, Bobby's quite, my co-founder Bobby is quite, strict about. Do you know what I mean? Because the reality is that she's worked in fashion and she's done it in the luxury sector. So she knows the standard and expectation that these brands need to produce at. So we're finding that obviously because of just kind of their experience and what they're exposed to, there isn't this consciousness or awareness of the standard within the West, or even just what goes into a luxury brand, because, you can produce your clothing to a luxury or high quality standard, but it's not just the clothing that the consumer's buying, it's the experience. So a lot of designers are struggling to be able to really package themselves in a way that will appeal to the luxury consumer. Do you know what I mean? Consumer here in the West. And that's one of the reasons why we come in. Do you know what I mean? Because our kind of ethos is to not only just, sell them, but to help support them to really build sustainable brands, and gain that kind of access to knowledge that they wouldn't have been able to gain otherwise.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So you're facilitating that transition in a way, and making it a little bit easier for those brands to I guess be packaged in a certain way and make sure that they're they're presenting the product the way it should be presented.
Definitely.
Yeah. Are there any like tips that you can share with founders that are trying to build sustainable brands? So maybe like 2 or 3 tips that you can share, like something that they need to be aware of when they're kicking it off.
I would say be aware of the market and what you deliver. Do you know what I mean? I think obviously the one of our designers, we did an event with one of our designers like a couple of weeks back. No, actually it was last month. And one of the things he said was his job is not to, reinvent the wheel. It's to observe the wheel and to, and figure out what's missing. So I would say as a sustainable brand or someone who's entering the market, it's very important that you are aware of the market and what you bring to the table. Because like I said, the fashion industry is like overcrowded. Do you know what I mean? It's saturated. So unless you're doing something or producing a garment to a standard of quality, but also have a story that really resonates with consumers, you're not really going to stand out from the crowd. And the best way to do that is by being authentic and true to who you are. So I would say, be aware of the market, be competent enough. Do you understand? And I would say stay true to your values and be authentic.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. We will be opening up the sort of the panel for questions now. So I have a couple of questions already, and everyone else, if you have a question for Samuel, please tap an icon on the bottom with a question mark, send it to us, and we will go through that. So the first question we have here is future of African fashion. What are your predictions?
Great question. I believe the future is Africa, to be honest with you. I feel that we're going to see, some amazing brands emerge from West Africa and from Africa over the next 10 years. Do you know what I mean? I feel that, as obviously awareness comes to these brands, that's gonna be a leading sector, a leading, a leading country within the fashion industry. I think we are gonna see disruption, do you know what I mean, within the industry, because I think it's longing for disruption, especially in the digital age. There's just so much that can be achieved. There's so much that can be done with fashion. So I feel that over the next 10 years, the future is Africa. Do you know what I mean? And I feel that we're going to more designers and a lot, successful brands come out of the continent.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any a couple of maybe up and coming brands from the continent that you can share that we need to follow and sort of that's the next big thing?
I'll say Furuche is definitely one of them. I'm quite biased. I think all of the brands that are on our platform are worth following. Do you know what I mean? Holla Rose as well. Look out for her. She's been 8 years in the industry. I would say all of our brands that are on our platform are worth following, because the reality is, they are the next big thing. They're doing so well. Do you know what I mean? And there's been so much interest from a lot of Western e-commerce platforms. Like I said, Furuche got stopped on Farfetch recently. We're seeing obviously Atto on Folklore as well as Furuche. Do you know what I mean? So there is more of an interest and more kind of a desire to really, work with emerging talent and brands that are based on the continent.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. We have a recurring question. So it's a question actually that we are getting asked for the second time. But the question is, and I think it is connected largely to what we've already talked, that authentic voice that helps brands to stand out in this saturated market. So the question is, how do you get your first 1,000 Instagram followers? So I guess it's a very practical question. Yeah, 1,000 followers on Instagram.
There's something a friend of mine says, he says, connect, don't collect. I think it's more important for you to build relationships with your following than it is for you to collect followers. We see so many instances where, brands have thousands of followers, but ain't able to sell any items. I think even just the other day, it was mentioned about, a YouTube subscriber having hundreds of thousands of subscribers, but only selling £300 worth of items or stuff. And that's because obviously he must not have connected with his audience in the way that he should have. So I would say it's definitely worth connecting with your following. But I feel that, if you're quite keen to still build your following, I feel it's you can obviously recruit PR agencies, to help with that aspect of things. But I would say one of the things that Instagram, particularly if you're building an Instagram page, it loves, consistency. So I'll say just day in, day out, be consistent, create great quality content, do you know what I mean, that resonates with your audience, and then just build from there. And eventually you will get the followers that you're designing.
Yeah. Are there any tools or services, applications that you use that are helpful for you with building that presence on social?
I actually had an assistant that was using a tool, actually. I think she was using Buffer, if I remember correctly. And that obviously posts on multiple platforms. One thing I will say as well is make sure that you're catering your language to the different audiences that you're trying to reach via the different platforms. Because obviously, if you're speaking to someone on LinkedIn, it's going to be very different from the language you're going to use to speak to someone on Twitter. So I would say make sure that you work out your tone of voice, be authentic, and make sure that you're able to kind of communicate that tone of voice across your multiple platforms. That's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I would also say that one other app that is also great, specifically for Instagram, is an app called Later. So they also have a lot of really cool features with like built-in links and posting in stories and so on. So for anyone, check it out. And another one that has been recommended multiple times, Canva, which is specifically for visual sort of stuff, for all the
Yeah.
imagery and so on. Yeah.
I'm a graphic
Um,
designer, so I tend to use Adobe Suite, yeah, to design
ah,
stuff. So I don't really use Canva. Yeah, yeah. So I
well,
design
you're at
from
like next
scratch. I
level.
design the old-fashioned, the
Yeah, yeah.
old-fashioned way. So yeah,
Yeah. Next question, and I love this one. Founder to founder, how do you stay on top of things?
founder to founder. It's funny, my co-founders just joined me, and I'm pretty sure she'll say I don't stay on top of things because, I'm, um, like yeah, I spend all my time working. Do you know what I mean? I think one thing that I will say is get up early. You know, just make sure that you're maximizing the day. Do you know what I mean? And make sure that you're actually utilizing it as much as possible. I think obviously one of the banes of being an entrepreneur or a founder is you never switch off. Do you know what I mean? Like in the back of your mind, ticking away is your business and how you're going to grow it to the next level or get the next level of sales. So I would say wake up early, utilize the day, and make sure you're taking regular breaks. Do you know what I mean? And resting when you need to rest. I try not to work on weekends. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's difficult, but that's my cutoff point. Do you know what I mean? I try to dedicate Saturday and Sunday to just recover and just rest. So make sure you have those designated, you can switch off and just kind of, yeah, explore life and experience life.
Are there any routines that you feel are like helping you with those regular breaks and just in general, like kind of dealing with the entrepreneurial sort of uncertainties of life?
Yeah, I think it's hard because obviously with Zoom, like we're having Zoom meetings back to back in it. Um,
Yeah.
so it's back to back. So I think obviously it's difficult to now take breaks as we usually would. Do you know what I mean? But what can I say to that? I think obviously for me, one thing I've done is break up the day. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it will be a situation where I would say, okay, so in the morning I'm going to respond to emails. I'm going to make sure that I'm on top of my emails. Then the other half of the day, it's Alana stuff. Then maybe the afternoon, it's any design work that I need to do or sort out. Do you know what I mean? So break up the day in a way that works for you is very, very important. Do you know what I mean? And if it means that, you need to take a nap in the afternoon or the evening, just to make sure that you're recovering, do that. Because I
Yeah.
think it's important that you're working to the best of your capacity, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are getting some confirmations in comments as well, both that rest is very important, but also I guess a co-founder confirmation that you are being very
Yeah, yeah.
wise. And you are indeed, I think, staying on top of things.
Yeah.
So next question, what is the next big thing for Ilana? I think you covered it a little bit, but if you want to just one more time to mention, like maybe product updates or anything big that you guys having preparing.
Um, yeah, we're quite keen to onboard, at least 200 designers over the next couple of months by the end of, summer. So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we onboarded a new designer to our store as well on the roll. So do check out our items. But for us, it's really important that we grow our community. Do you know what I mean? And really serve as many designers on ground in West Africa and over the diaspora. So yeah, that's our focus. Our focus to really build out our community and ensure that we're both recruiting on the sides of experts, but we're also getting designers benefiting, from the expertise that our experts are offering via the community. And just to focus on bringing investment as well. So we're quite keen to, improve our store and improve, our platform, and start our membership program as well as get some more exposure, do you know what I mean, around what we're doing. So yeah, fortunately enough, we've had some great, receptions and responses. So recently featured in UAL's, webs on UA website. And yeah, just talking about my journey, we have like a TV interview coming up as well. So the aim is to get as much exposure and just raise awareness about our offering and the ability, yeah, that the change that we're creating in the fashion industry.
Yeah, that makes sense. And maybe on that note, if there is a brand, let's say, that wants to get in touch with you guys, like, what is the best way to do that?
Can ping us an email, I@alana.uk. Also, you can follow us on socials and reach out to any of our social media outlets. We're more than happy to connect with you on there. So you can follow us at alana.uk. My co-founders just posted that in the comments, so you can check that out. But yeah, it's connect with us either via our website, email, or socials. Any way that you works for you. We're receptive to any of those.
Yeah, perfect. I think we have time for one or two more questions. So the next question we have is, and I think this is again going back to the pandemic, but now it's more about post-pandemic. So how do you think your business will change post-pandemic?
I'm confident that we'll grow even more. Do you know what I mean? I think once we're post-pandemic, we'll obviously be able to, build relationships on ground in Ghana and Nigeria. We're quite keen to get out there and to connect with designers on ground there. So fortunately enough, one of our fortunately enough, our platform is, pandemic or recession proof because it's online. Do you know what I mean? And the fact is that we're catering to not only designers, but we're also catering to consumers. So it's a situation where for us post-pandemic, we'll just grow. Do you know what I mean? And we'll continue to grow because it will give us the opportunity to connect and to do things that we haven't been able to do due to the pandemic.
Yeah, and I'm there with you. I'm very bullish on this as well, because I think if anything, we've seen that pandemic has accelerated the growth of e-commerce. But also, if we think about the new generation of shoppers, they are value driven. And I think for a lot of them, brands that you represent and what you as a business represent is something that will resonate very strongly. Because it's really about, as we talked, like sustainable, ethical brands. It's about representation. It's about bringing the best of the best. So I think with that regards, like I am there with you, and I think that the
Definitely.
company will have a very bright future there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously down to even just like shoots, we haven't been able to do regular shoots as we would like to. We haven't been able to do a lot of things. Do you know what I mean? So in terms of obviously building the platform to the level that we want to, we'll be able to do that post-pandemic. Do you know what I mean? So for us, we're quite keen to take everything to the next level once we enter out of the pandemic. Do you know what I mean? Like we'll take everything to the next level and we'll grow tremendously because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have one last question, and I think this one is coming from probably an up-and-coming brand's founder, which is how to acquire customers on a budget. So maybe a couple of hacks and tricks that you can share in terms of, I think in this case there, I assume it's a B2C kind of context, how to acquire customers on their online channels on the budget.
I think it's already something I've mentioned before about connecting and not collecting. It's important that you build authentic relationships with your customer and really find out, do you know what I mean, resonates with them and how to serve them. Do you know what I mean? I think, that's really important, especially in this day and age. People are longing for community, so find ways to connect with your audience that will resonate with them. Do you know what I mean? If it's required, like it could be as simple as creating a mailing list, which, keeps them regularly updated on the progress of your brand. They may not necessarily, do you know what I mean, buy straight away, but as they continue to see your brand grow, what you're doing, locally and to connect with people resonate with you and eventually they'll buy into your brand. So I think it's important that we just build relationships, do you know what I mean, whatever way that is convenient and to us, do you know what I mean? Like, you can start from somewhere and just grow from there, start within your network, do you know what I mean? Like, reach out to your friends, reach out to people that tell them what you're starting, what you're building, and start from your community and grow from there. Eventually you'll get the right kinds of people buying into your brand, especially if you stay authentic and true to why you started and your why is clear and, people will buy into it and people will resonate with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can attest to that as well. At Easysize, we work with a lot of brands, and one thing that we have seen working so well is when brands find authentic ways of keeping in touch and building that relationship with their customers. Like a lot of brands, we see they now even engage customers into decisions like, hey, what new products should we add to our brand, or which colors to pick, or like, how did you like this certain item after you purchased it, and so on. So all of those nuggets of information, they help people feel that they're heard, and it also helps build
Yeah.
a brand that people actually need.
Yeah. So feedback form, for instance, you can create a feedback form. Hey, what do you think of our products before you launch it? Select a small group of people and say, okay, yeah, we're looking to launch these items. What do you think about it? What can we improve? And essentially reiterate it as you progress. Do you know what I mean? And take that feedback and improve your items and just keep them posted about, the progress of things. As your customer begins to see that, their opinions are being valued and heard, they'll begin to connect and resonate with your brand even more. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's important that you just keep that feedback loop going into your brand as much as possible, finding out what their opinion is, getting their feedback, getting their insights, and improving your brand based on those insights.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Well, I think that was our last question. And
No worries.
before we close this stream, is there anything else that you wanted to share? Any links, any personal plugs, any resources, or anything of that sort with the audience today?
The only thing I'm saying, check out Ilana, like ilana.uk. And yeah, follow our progress. We're changing the game and we're changing the world, and we're really creating a pathway for emerging talent. So that's the only plug. It'll be great to have you on this journey with us. We started in November last year and we're 4 months in, and we're making some real strides. We have 7 designers on our community, so really just kind of keep an eye on us, because we are going to really make waves in the fashion industry moving forward over the next couple of months.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm so extremely excited about what you guys are building. And as Sam mentioned, follow them at ilana.uk, check out their website. I think it's going to be interesting both from the consumer perspective as well as for anyone in the industry, just to see what's happening. So with that, thank you again so much for spending this hour with us. It has been super exciting for me. I think it's been so knowledgeable as well, like just to get nuggets of the information from what you're seeing and what you're building. And I'm really excited to see what Ilana what will be the next chapter, because what you guys achieved in 4 months, I cannot imagine what you will do in the next years.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me as well. It's been great.
Absolutely.
Look forward to following Easysize as well and seeing what you guys do in the weeks and months to come.
Yeah, and for anyone who's interested, please join us next Wednesday as well. We do the streams every week, every Wednesday, where we talk to fashion entrepreneurs and founders of direct-to-consumer brands. And it's really a place for us to share experiences and learn from each other. So if you're into this industry, do follow us and join us next Wednesday as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.